Alright, section 2 of the Model F7. Normal operation. Successful road operation dependable the function of all of the F7 locomotives component entirely dependent with the quality inspection prepared with the regular maintenance for the period as well with the proficiency of the operating crew with the supplement with the terminal painting for the pre-service check, engine crew operation boarding of the locomotive generally peculiar with the necessary anyone of the entire engine room with all underway. The strong recommend of the items listed below with the check thoroughly without omission for the carelessness of the most off the cuff of the road failures which will cause the unnecessary delays. Preliminary 200 preliminary when boarding locomotive. The inspector exterior locomotive running gear for liquids leaking from the locomotive, loosening the dragging parts, proper position angle cocks and shut off valves. Observe the brakes signal and piston trouble if the brakes are set. B. If the engine room is while the engine is running, the engines are not running. See Article 300 with the starting instruction. The following checklists to be made with all the units. Check the oil, water, and fuel leaks. Check with the gauges, indicator switches are listed, and 3. Check the position with the transition cutoff switch that should be pinned with the seal with the position with the locomotive operated within all man or all auto drain considered station with the air brake system. Check with the position with the control of the emergency cock of the D24 control valve, and on the B unit with the position of the cock show with the corresponding setting with the rotary hour with the operating with the cab of the freight over the passenger room, the cab trailing unit, trailing A with the rotary valve with the proper lap position. C. The brake and the valve within the proper cutout. When the running, returning back with each of the unit, check of the release for the handbrake in each of the unit, and the good practice for the check of the battery and meter with the distribution panel, each of the unit with seeing the auxiliary generators charging. Alright, engine room check chart. 1 is your 1 through 8 is on the top here. It shows the auxiliary generator, the starting contactors, in the cab, and 3 the control air pressure, 4 the battery and meter, 5 on the backside of the ground relay, 6 your main reserve, 7 your air intercooler, air compressor intercooler, air compressor oil pressure, 8 and then 9 through 12 on the backside at the diesel engine and the main generator. Failure to check the unit failed to properly check with the letters of the axis of the RB and YB to indicate with the cause of the red, blue, and yellow blue lights to come on with the Article 31 details. Alright, 9 is Lube Oil Level, 10 is the oil speed, engine speed, fuel indication, 11 in the governor oil level, 12 the water pressure, 13 water temperature, 14 oil installation switch, 15 lube oil pressure, 16 fuel supply, 17 load regulator, 18 lube oil suction, 19 water level generator, 20 water generated water supply, 21 overspeed stripe with 22 fuel flow. Alright, in the cab, check the brake level, the cutoff valve with the rotary valve with the position freight path with the desired with the pass recommended with the running passenger recommended with the running light. If the locomotive is to run with the light with a considerable distance with a short freight with the train with the rotary valve with the rotary air valve with the trailing with the cab should be placed with the passenger lap with the control of the emergency cutout cock on the control valve of the B unit with the rotary valve with the operating cab should be placed in the passenger position. Ensure the quick action emergency locomotive unit with the long freight train with above valve passenger freight lap with the trailing A unit and freight on the B unit, freight lap on the A unit, freight lap on the B unit, and which for the effect of the controlled emergency each of the locomotive units. The controlled emergency action with the nullified with the operating of the A unit only at the time of the quick action emergency is required for the placing of the independent brake valve with the full application of the position additional flow emergency position automatic brake valve. Install the reverse level to move the other direction either forward or reverse. The reversing switch electrical control cabinet move the opposite direction. Reverse level is moved with the transition lever in the opposition only. The transition lever in the running position, reverse switch is not to move in the opposite direction. Reverse lever is moved after the throttle is open. Place the manual transition lever to number 1 position. Move the transition lever to the light as high as it goes. Firmly with the direction of the move lever. Maintain the side pressure lower level and it will slip on the next notch. 4. If the locomotive is equipped with a dynamic brake, check for the position unit selector which switch. 2. The corresponding number of the units of the locomotive push the generator field switch. 201 handling lights of the locomotive. The running light control complete cab with the preparation Article 200 item C. Place the foot settle on the safety control foot pedal with the release of the independent brake. Open the throttle 1 notch at a time. To open the throttle jerk the throttle generally 1 notch relief. Then permit the lever to set itself with the next notch. 4. Note that the locomotive rolls freely and care should be used in the judging the speed. With the case of throttle with the idle be setting the brake, the locomotive must standing still with the time and the reversal moved. Alright, B. Coupling the train. The locomotive must not be moved where the air hose is hanging free on the nose A unit. In the backing on the train, that may be desirable to use the attendants to call rear of the A unit with the train signal whistle valve of the rear of the A unit with the B unit of the signal valve and cocks. Nose angle cock them behind the fireman. Nose and angle cock is behind the pilot on the free fireman's side. Steamline valve behind the pilot with the emergent engine side of the pilot plate. It must be removed to connect the steam line. The train line signal whistle shut off valve within the nose compartment directly ahead of the engine is only signal light, reducing the valve at the front of the center of the brake rack. Pumping the air. Pull up out the generator field switch. Place the reverser in neutral. Open the throttle to 4 or 6 notches needed. 202, splitting and joining units. To take down all the jumpers inside and outside of the diaphragm, close the angle cock of the bowls of the units and on all air hoses. Break the hoses separately units of the uncoupling. And joining units. Track unit with the ensure couplers are locked and set the hose and the jumpers, or be sure that the ankle cocks are all air hoses open and the both units. Cut out the brakes. All control switches, all but the operating unit to move the reverser for the lever and training of the A unit. Hey, handling a train starting. Recheck with the cab app preparation Article 200, Item C. Freight. If it was practical, impose the right of the definition instruction of the train starting with would apply with all conditions all time, but it would be noted that the locomotive does not remove the spine with assuming that the throttle is operation open, but the fact that it may be several seconds before the locomotive will start moving, and due to the fact that the load of the regulator arm resting on the minimum position by the meant with the total arm amount of the resistance of the generator battery field switch, reducing the generator field excitation into a minimum. The throttle is open with the run 1 and with the pilot valve of the engine governor become the unbalance of the covering the engine lube oil with the flow of the vane motor to the load generator with the covering the arm to move the toward the maximum position of the arm, move toward the maximum resistance, cut out with the generator battery field circuit, increasing the generator excitation, increasing the generator output with the start of the locomotive train. Locomotives, when delivered, are adjusted for the increase of the power output with the control of the load regulator governor rather than the throttle. Thus, although the throttle lift is open rapidly with the rate of the power increase with the control of the load with the regulator governing the small start assured. If the train does not start with the first attempt, it may be found necessary to take the slack. Make sure that all the brakes are released. The actuating test is at least a 100-car train has shown that as much as 9 minutes may be required to complete a release of the brakes. Although this is unusual condition, damage of the coupler may result in a haze. When the train has moved far enough for all the slack to be taken up, the desired practice is to be open the throttle with the 10. The desired speed as soon as practicable. As the heavy train starts to move, the indicator point will probably overload the yellow area. As the pointer starts to move to the right and start at the back to the left, open the throttle and around the notch. Continue in this manner until the run number 8 and the desired and then to be attained. Speed has to be attained. Starting ferry in the one or two units. Play for the foot and safety control pedal. Relief the brakes. Open the throttle quickly with the running forward with the observe the load with the indicator pointer. Move to the right. If this train has started with the moving the pointer with the passes to 825 amperes, relief throttle to 1 notch. If the train is not moving to the pointer passes 825 amperes advance, throttle 1 notch immediately after the starting to move the drop throttle to 2 notches to avoid slipping. When train moving, they advance the throttle 1 notch each time, and the hand moves in and out left until they run 8 into the desired speed, but the movement is reached. So should the wheels slip in the starting of the accelerating train with the drop of the throttle 1 or more notches before standing in the starting of the train with going above the run 5, the will only result in violent wheel slippage. Alright, freight 3 and 4 with the unit locomotive, same in the procedure with 1 and 2 units, exempt the throttle with the open rapidly, run 3 instead of run 4 position. Alright, your passenger, 1 or more units, same in the procedure with the 1 or 2 units, except that the throttle is open rapidly with the run 3 position instead of the run 4. Since passenger train is easier than long freight trains, reaching throttle 1 or 2 notches will not necessarily be necessary unless slipping occurs. Starting the passenger if necessary with the consider the weight of the train amount with the slack with the condition rail with the demand with the schedule the full scale reading for the load indicator meter permissible on above the start however the indicator point with the move of the continuing moving the left of the train accelerated with the move of the 825 amperes left before any with the short time amper the ratings are exceeded. 204, accelerating the train. After the end throttle is in the 8 notch, the load indicating the point meter should be moved slowly toward the left, and the pointer is over at load area. The must continue to move until the green area, in the green area. The locomotive is overload, operating with the overload area. The can continue. The only time indicated on the plate with the indicator meter with the shown with the Article 309, Figure 1-2. If the train speed continues to accelerate, point of the load indicator meter with the cross of the space between the number one and number two. Locomotive being operated with the automatic transition lever to the number one position along with the locomotive's under power. All the normal transition forward and backward are made automatically with the throttle number 8 without any attention on any of the part of the engine. If the locomotive is being operated with a manual transition, the engine man must move with the transition lever to the number 2 position, with the lever that must begin with the advance of the pointer cross of the space between area number 3. Again, area number 4, and the cliff of the throttle slow down with the stop of the pointer with the swinging left of the beginning, because of the engine generator load with the being reduced on advance of the transition lever. At this time, the transition lever should be advanced only when the throttle is in the run 8 position, when the exemption with the event of the starting with the top of the long downgrade with the transition lever the number 1 position. Train speed will increase while the engine throttle is reduced with the position, and before operating the throttle at the bottom of the grade, the transition lever should be advanced with the transition position corresponding with the train speed. When transferring to 2 to 3 or 3 to 2, the throttle must be reduced to the running 6 position after position has been made. The throttle is open with the run 8 with the prevent loosening of the train speed should stay with the 3 to 5 seconds in effect with the smooth and proper transition. 205, slowing down because of the grade. The train slowing down on the grade pointing on the indicator meter will move slowly toward the right, with the right must be being moved operated with the transition backward transition taking place automatically. If the locomotive is being operated with the manual transition, the transition lever must be moved to the corresponding with the position with the move, then moved across the space of the area of the next area. Braking, 206, air braking with power. Under certain conditions, with the desirable to keep the train stretched during the slowdown or stop, it is done with the throttle, it should be closed with at least the 6-notch independent brake fully released. As the train's decrease to scream of the throttle may become eased off if the train slows down with the pulling of the power. Locomotive increases rapidly might have become great enough for the part of the train with the throttle that may be reduced. The train should be in the idle before locomotive comes to the dead stop. Your dynamic braking. The U for the dynamic braking. C for the unit selector switch located with the next for the instrumental panel. The C set the corresponding with the number of the unit for the locomotive. Consider for the throttle in which the at least 10 seconds of the movement. Transition lever to the for the reverse lever that must either be forward, reverse to operate the dynamic with the dynamic brake. For the reverse lever that must be the direction the locomotive is moving. The reverse lever the opposite direction the locomotive is moving the brake. While just as effective with the current generated with the traction motor will flow with the transition indicated with the opposite direction. Possible damage to the meter, as the pointer of the meter will move backward to the indicated brake after the shown with the scale of the meter. If the train is moving with a considerable speed, enough brake will develop in the opposition to the bunch of slack necessary to move the lever to the B weight until the slack is bunched with the dynamic brake is in effect with the independent brake of the indicated meter with the actuating the brake cylinder pressure gauge. The same precaution must be moved with the controlling slack with the independent brake of the locomotive. After slacking a bunch of the lever to move with the corresponding amount of the brake at the point, move the carried upon the red triangle with the indicator with the meter with the should be not confused with the red diamond. This must be the dynamic braking warning light. Must determine the stay light. In either case, the end of each of the slightly break off until the condition is remedied. The difference of the idling speed of the engine variation for the motor generator characteristic may cover the dynamic brake warning light to come on with the cover of the meter reach of the red triangle, but in any case the light must be on. The light is an indication of overload operating with a on my dynamic of the protraction motor and braking grids. The independent brake must be kept fully relieved at all times. The dynamic braking U for the wheels may be slowed with the speed decreased below the 10 miles per hour with the dynamic braking left with the effective of the speed fully further decrease in the permissible complete release dynamic braking play for the transition lever. The number 1 position apply the independent brake simultaneously to prevent slack with the running out. Whenever the desirable automatic brake may be used with the conjunction of the dynamic brake provided with the independent brake kept fully released. Most effective use for the dynamic brake is between 15 and 25 miles per hour depending on the gear ratio. Speeds on the grades should not be allowed to keep crap up. Careless handling of the brake is shown with the holding of the brake is not effective for slowing down with the heavy train at steep grades. Miscellaneous operation instruction. Operation in railroad crossings. When the crossing of the railroad crossing, the reduce the throttle the 5th notch before reaching the crossing line. Leave the reducer until all units over the crossing in order to reduce the arcing of the brush of the motor communicator. 210. Change the operating end. For the consistency of the locomotive that includes the 2 A units following the procedure should be followed with the changing of the operating end with the opposite end. The locomotive is equipped with an electro-pneumatic brake. For the brakes have been used with the change of the brake selector, automatic brake valve with the auto open with the electrical pneumatic brake switch. To remove the reverse lever, with the safety control pedal depressed with the release of the independent brake, air brake, placing the independent brake valve in the handle release position. Make the full surface automatic brake vibration, close with the brake pipe cutout clock, release the safety control foot pedal. Move the rotary valve of the run lap position. Move the automatic brake valve handle to the running position. Move the handle with the brake valve, and then move the independent brake valve handle to the lock switch off position. Then proceed with the cab at the opposite end with the pneumatic control switch. Reset if necessary. Open the switch with the control push button switch box, and close with the control and fuel pump switches such as the other switches necessary. Insert the reverse lever, automatic brake valve handle, independent brake valve handles. Play with the independent brake valve in the full application position. Move the rotary valve in the proper operation of the position. Open the brake valve cutout cock of the double ending head cock slowly, passing the 5 to 10 seconds of the midpoint, mid position, readily move the locomotive. Just press safety of the control foot pedal, automatic brake valve handle. Move the independent brake valve handle to the release position. 211, operating the AB unit with the holster over the control of the operating with the holster station the same as the A unit, the push button switch for the side of the control with the brake level, the cutoff swatches below the brake valve, the bell with the ring valve, with the global valve with the near with the controller. Or the number 1 transition of the lever to be able to move in the reverse level of the automatic play for the locomotive. The number 1 position is remember the all operation of the B unit controls will be operated also joined to it. When securing the holster of the control be sure that all the push buttons pulled with the control reverser pin with the brake valve cutout cock of these items after the operation of the other station and cab. 212, leaving a locomotive. Officials of the mechanical department varies with the railroad generally issue the instruction of the nature of the apply with their own individual requirements. Condition vary with each of the different railroad as good maintenance between the different localities on the same railroad. 213, airbox drain. Each of the engine has 2 airbox drain tanks incorporated with the engine oil pan near the generator and one on each side of the tank that has a valve with the drain line with the tanks made with the drain with the locomotive standing still with the sludge from the oil tank will be not carried for the running gear. The van with the drain tank becomes filled with the telltale hole with the tank will blow with the overflowing sludge water into the engine room floor which appear with the telltale hole. The cause should be investigated. Section 214, unusual operation conditions. Unusual operation conditions such as overloading, running through water, failure with the indicating meter, and isolation unit that are covered in Section 3.